Ho, 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 and hello. It's the MMQ. I tried to hybrid the ho, ho, ho with the hello, and sometimes you take chances.
We are off to a flying start. That was out of left field. Just for everybody listening out there, I had no clue that was coming.
No clue that's coming. That's Albert Breer. I'm Conor. This is the MMQB podcast. We have 1 week left of the regular season. My God, how time flies. We are going to follow a similar format as last week. We're going to kind of distill things into some takeaways because let's be honest. I mean, do you guys really need to break down the minutia of Drew Lock's 4-touchdown performance against the Colts? I'll talk about it if you guys want to talk about it. I will say this.
You're a huge fan of bad football, and I'll actually say this. Like, I've gotten more into it this year. Like, I don't know if there's just more of it out there for me, but I've gotten more into watching these irrelevant games because, like, crazy stuff can happen, and, like, the variance and effort from player to player and team to team is pretty cool to watch. Like, there's just, like, so many subplots, you know?
If I just watching Brian Dable, you could see him on the sideline just be like, you guys didn't want to do that when they were flying the goddamn planes over the stadium?
That was my favorite part. That was my favorite part about yesterday is the cloud cover prevented the planes from coming out.
Yeah, but not in Duval because Jacksonville Jaguars did have a plane, but only specifically to fire Trent Baalke, which I thought was really funny.
No comment on Doug Peterson, which
right.
Like I said I thought that was a first, and then I got like all of these different like examples of it. Like I think the Jets had multiple examples. Like
John Idzik.
Yeah. One was Idzik, and there was another one. Was it? I don't know if McCagden got one, but there were like multiple Jets ones. There was a Chiefs one, Pioli. Like like this was not a first. So apparently the private aviation messaging business has been thriving for years on general manager messaging.
So it's like what are these idiots doing?
Didn't we look up how much it costs? Like, because that was something I was actually curious.
I think it was not that much. Again, right. So when you take into account fuel costs, you take into account what it costs to get your pilot's license, maintenance on the plane. I don't know how these guys are making money.
Right. Wasn't it like it was like $1,500 or something, which isn't that bad at all.
No, I might skywrite something over MetLife Stadium. Who knows? Think about it. Before we get going, though, we should just update everybody on the playoff standings as we see them again. Monday Night Football is about 12 hours away from when Albert and I are taping this, so keep that in mind. But the Chiefs, okay, let's start there. They're the number 1 seed in the playoffs. They don't have anything to play for yet. I think half of America is hoping that Carson Wentz rips apart the Denver Broncos next week, and we see what happens there. So Buffalo, they play the Patriots in the regular season finale. Nothing there. They have the number 2 seed. They're not going to lose it. They have the division. We're going to see Mitch Trubisky. All right. How exciting. Baltimore. Okay. They can clinch the AFC North with a win over the Browns, or if the Pittsburgh Steelers lose to the Bengals. And both of these games take place on Saturday. Okay.
And are the Browns tanking?
Yes. Let's get to that.
That was like, and like they sort of opened themselves up to it because they're the analytics team. They're the team that would do it. They're the team that would have like one of the nerds come from upstairs and say, well, according to our probability chart here, our chances of getting the quarterback position right are 300% greater if we play Dorian Thompson-Robinson over Jameis Winston on Sunday.
Oh, I mean, it's not. I mean, the Browns have tanked before. They paid Hugh Jackson bonuses for obtaining more draft picks in early rounds. That, yeah. Like literally gave him cash to do that. Cash in an envelope. So I think it's not. I mean,
that was like I watched. So like last night, like we had it was because of like the schedule being spread so thin by Christmas and the Saturday games. Like you had the opportunity to watch on 2 screens a great Packers-Vikings game, right? Mm-hmm. Like which was top notch, and we'll talk about that. And then on the other screen, you had Dolphins-Browns, which was Snoop Huntley's like redemption story.
Oh yeah,
keeping the Dolphins in the playoff picture.
Um, yeah, I mean, I love how everyone. This is a sidetrack, obviously. Everyone's like, "Oh my God, are the Browns tanking?" Yes, they've done it like 4 times already. Like they are a team. Like remember when they cut like Mitchell Schwartz and all those good players? Like
and if you think about it, it's actually kind of smart, and just that like. What other way are they going to have to? What other way are they going to solve the quarterback issue with Deshaun's contract on their books? That's the only way.
If I'm Kevin Stefanski, I'm running for the hills. I gotta figure out how to fix Cam Ward too. Like,
well, I mean, like, but if you look at it, like, there's the only way you're going to fix it long term is through the draft right now, because you cannot take on another quarterback contract. Like, ideally, if you're the Browns, maybe what you do here is, if this is a conventional quarterback contract, you cut Deshaun and you go sign Sam Darnold, which we'll get to Darnold, right?
Yeah.
Or something like that. But you can't do that. So, like, you're stuck, and you've put yourself in this spot where, you know, I've reported this, you know, a few times over now, like, that they plan on putting competition, like real competition, in the room. And that's either through a reclamation project, like a Justin Fields, and hoping like somebody like that is the next Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold, or you draft one. And you know, drafting one's obviously the cheaper route, and you'd have the guy under cost control for multiple years. So tanking is actually like the smart move here. It's just kind of funny seeing the whole thing in action.
I mean, think of how many generations of great Browns that they've done this to now. They tanked with Joe Thomas and just made the end of his career miserable. They did it with, I guess, Nick Chubb now, Joel Bitonio, like all these guys that have laid it out in the line for them. So I'm with Myles Garrett.
Is this the second time Myles Garrett's been through this?
No.
Was it 18 that they tanked?
They tanked, I think, to get Myles Garrett.
Okay. Okay,
yeah.
because they had the number one pick the next year, too, and they took Baker.
Correct.
But
I think
that
they were just
was
bad
not
at that point.
Huh?
Yeah, I think they were just bad at that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't remember which year was the year they tanked. Okay. So the tanking resulted in Myles Garrett, which worked out.
Theoretically, I mean, what, you got one playoff win out of it, right? I mean, you've won one playoff game since 2017. So, sure, yeah, it worked out, I guess, you know?
Well, you got like a Hall of Fame player.
I guess, yeah.
If you could have like done better around him, it's not Myles Garrett's fault. Like they haven't won more.
I could be terrible and get a lot of Hall of Fame players. Like the Jets have had Hall of Fame players, you know?
That's true.
But anyway, let's finish up the playoff scenarios here. The Houston Texans, nothing is on the line for the Texans. In Week 18, they play the Titans. You know, they're good. So the Steelers, they can win the AFC North if they beat the Bengals and the Ravens lose to the Browns.
Which isn't happening.
We all know isn't happening. The Chargers. So in Week 18, they play the Raiders.
Wait, you know what? I want to ask about this, because this is like the scheduling thing, because the NFL like insists on creating the new broadcast window on Saturday. Is the Steelers game the late game? It is, right?
Because
the two AFC North games are on Saturday.
Right.
I think the Ravens game's first, right?
As it should be.
No,
right?
The Steelers game should be first, I would think. Because they may have screwed that. Hold on. I got to look at this because...
No. Hold on. I have it up. So
Okay.
Cleveland Browns at Baltimore Ravens, 4:30. Cincinnati Bengals at Pittsburgh Steelers, 8
didn't
p.m.
the NFL screw this up? Because wouldn't you want the Steelers not knowing?
You would want the Steelers to play first. And then...
So then they wouldn't know. And then that would create... I mean, because... Or no, you wouldn't, because the Steelers still could play for the 5 or 6, whereas like if the Steelers lose, then the Ravens win the division and have nothing to play for, right?
Right.
Okay.
And
that makes sense now.
Do you really want the Browns in prime time right now? Like, at all?
Right. But I think actually logically it does make sense, because the Bengals could very well beat the Steelers, and if that happens, now the Ravens would be locked into 3 and have nothing to play for, and then you've got a god-awful Saturday night game, right?
Ugh. I mean,
because like if you're the Ravens, then what do? You probably don't sit. You probably sit Lamar, right?
I mean, you would have to.
I'd be like, he's already taken enough damage. Screw it, you know?
Yeah,
I would think.
Sit your quarterbacks, people. All right, the Chargers. So they play the Raiders in the season finale. They have a wild card berth in hand already. It's a seeding issue with the Chargers at this point. So they will either be the number 5 or the number 6. And so a couple other things have to happen there. The Broncos, here's an interesting one. They have to beat Carson Wentz at home in week 18 to get into the playoffs. If they don't, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that can happen now.
So
okay?
let me ask you this though, because I think this one's really interesting. Okay, because of the Christmas scheduling again, the Chiefs are looking at what, like a 25-day layoff if they sit their guys.
Yeah.
So are you careful about that if you're Andy Reid?
Like, do you play Mahomes?
Do you play them like
half
a quarter or half?
quarter?
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, are you worried about that?
A little bit.
I mean, like, look, like I think
if
if it's like if we're talking about like Chris Jones, like I sit Chris Jones, right? Because like he has been hurt. Like like he doesn't need the extra reps.
Mahomes has an ankle injury. I'm doing air quotes right now. Ankle injury.
Right, but like if you're looking at it, like how would you balance that with that long a layoff? Because that's like even more than normal, right? You got the bye to consider, and then you got the extra 4 days because of Christmas.
It's true. I think so. It's interesting, right? This is one of those things where you and I can sit here and talk about, oh, well, this is what they should do. This is what the numbers say, right? There's good analytics on this, right? Rest differential and all that stuff. And we have a sample size of this, but this is one of those calls where it's like, this is an Andy Reid gut decision. It's like,
well, you have to know your team, right?
Do my guys need to play? I mean, you go back to the best example ever, which was Tom Coughlin playing at the end of that season that the Giants backed into the playoffs, and it was a meaningless game against the Patriots, right?
Right,
in the season
it was
finale.
the Patriots. Well, that was the Patriots were going for the undefeated season.
Yeah,
and I think the Giants were locked into their seed. Isn't that right? And the Patriots, like nothing could happen with their seed because they were obviously at that point 15-0, but they were going for the undefeated season, and that wound up being like an all-time great game, right? Like so, and then I think the Giants players would tell you, like that was real momentum for them going in, and I think they beat Tampa in the first round. They won 3 in a row on the road. They beat Dallas. I was covering the Cowboys at the time. I remember that the Cowboys were the number 1 seed, and then the Packers in the Freezer Bowl in the when Tom Coughlin puffed up like a chipmunk.
Oh, so good. I love that. So I think you have some stuff to consider there.
17 years ago, Connor. I'm old as shit. 17 years ago.
Jeepers. My goodness. Here's another question.
That game is now in high school.
If you're Andy Reid, okay, do you play or do you sit Mahomes completely? Because, I mean, and you can say that, oh, coaches don't think about this. We'll play anybody, anytime, anywhere. Sure, that's great in theory, but do you want to crack open the door to let Joe Burrow come into Arrowhead?
And that's the other part of it.
Right?
But couldn't you have the best of both worlds where you get your guys out there for and look, like the reality is this isn't college football. You only have so many guys on the roster, right? Like, and people think like you can sit everybody. You really can't. You just don't have enough people on the roster to do it. But you can pick out 5 or 10 guys and say like, we're either using you sparingly or not at all, or you're only out there for emergency situations. I think the Chiefs have to think about it with Kelsey and Jones because of their age. They have to think about it with Mahomes because of the accumulation of lower leg injuries, much as you might not want to believe it, Connor. And then I think they have to think about being careful with the offensive linemen too because they're so thin there, right?
Right? I mean, there's a lot to consider, and we'll get into that.
Like, sorry, Carson, but you're playing behind like some guy who's on the practice squad right now.
I watched a little bit of Carson.
It wouldn't surprise me if Andy fixes it. Like, wouldn't that be cool if like all of a sudden it looks like 2016, like late 2016 before the injury, Carson Wentz out there.
Here's the thing: I went back and I watched the snaps.
I mean, after what we've seen, and again, we're going to get to this, but after what we've seen with Baker and Sam, would it be that like crazy?
No, it wouldn't be that crazy. And when he took snaps for Andy Reid and the Chiefs, the ball was out on time. He looked good. I mean, granted, it was not a lot of snaps, but when he did, the ball was out on time. So, okay, why not? God, wouldn't that be like, just imagine the ire of Sean Payton if you lose that game to the Chiefs.
Carson Wentz.
And like also like in order for it to be a true Sean Payton loss, there has to be like a phantom holding call that's thrown in there at the end of the game somehow that
where he's throwing it with palms up like
Oh, man. I'm kind of like, you know what? Carson Wentz has gone through it, and I do think that there is a part of like there's a huge
But I feel like
part of the
everybody,
country-
I feel like America is rooting for Joe Burrow to get in the playoffs now.
Yeah, but here's the other part of it, right? So we need a lot of help to get Joe Burrow into the playoffs. And listen, I am the CEO.
Jets, Jets.
I mean, my God. So that's the other thing. I am the CEO of Get Joe Burrow into the playoffs. Trust me. And I'm guessing that if anybody else has a rooting interest in 345 Park, we might have some interesting calls with the referees this week about, what needs to get done here. Like, let's make it happen,
That replay
boys.
assist might be used for other reasons this week.
It's just like... So the Dolphins play the Jets in New York, and listen, we don't even know if Tua's playing in this game. Tua did not play this past week, and so that's a game that the Dolphins could lose no matter what, right? But if the Dolphins beat the Jets and the Broncos beat the Chiefs, the Dolphins are in. That's the worst case scenario. If the Dolphins beat the Jets and the Chiefs beat the Broncos, the Dolphins
Then we would get Dolphins at Buffalo in
Dolphins
first round.
and nobody wants to see the Dolphins in. Are we in agreement there? I don't want to see the Dolphins in the playoffs. I don't want to see the Dolphins losing the wild card again.
Yeah, I mean, because they'll go up to Buffalo and it probably won't be pretty.
No, it's just going to be the same thing that it always is. And,
like Denver at Buffalo is actually, to me at least, a little interesting. You know?
get Bo Nix on, yeah, for sure. But here's the one that we want. Okay, we need. Okay, we're all going to collectively.
Oh my God!
This.
It just hit me.
What?
We Cincinnati Buffalo in the first round, wouldn't it?
I know.
Oh my God!
Come on, that's what I'm saying. Like,
what a horrible result for the Bills.
I know.
What a terrible result.
So, here's what you want. Okay,
because that's like a bad matchup for them too. Like that's just a tough opponent. Like that's
a horrible matchup. Yeah. So we need Carson Wentz to basically reverse Nick Foles it, right? So now Carson Wentz is Nick Foles in the universe. He comes in and beats the Denver Broncos. And then we need because it always comes back to Aaron Rodgers. We need Aaron Rodgers to come off one of his worst games in his career and then beat the Miami Dolphins at home in the season finale.
Is that game in Miami or New York?
I believe it's in New York. And here's the reason why I don't
think... and that's a factor too. You got to check the weather, see what the weather's going to be. Like it could be like a really angry environment in that stadium, like not a good environment. You know what I mean? Like...
Yes, but here's the other thing to consider, Albert, okay? Aaron Rodgers is at 499 career touchdown passes. Okay? So Aaron Rodgers needs to play well in this game. Aaron Rodgers needs to throw a touchdown in this game. My guess is that some of these guys, like Sauce Gardner was on Instagram on Sunday saying that he's not going to tell players to come here and play. Now, I know that what he'll say is that he's taken out of context and the media is terrible and whatever, but I think some of these guys want to get out,
Yeah.
So, okay, go put on some good tape against the Dolphins. Go shut down Tyreek Hill and then get a big contract somewhere else.
This is like, so to me, for a team that like is in the position the Jets are, where it's just been screwed up 6 ways from Sunday and their season's been super sideways, like, Week 18 is much different than playing on like December 4th. Like December 4th is like a hard game to get up for. You know what I mean? Like December 4th, it's like the light at the end of the tunnel still isn't that bright. Your season's already over. You got nothing to play for. Like December 4th is like, that's like a weird one, like where it's just like, how do I even get myself motivated to go? Last game of the year is like, all right, like I got to put something on my resume now. Like, and if I haven't had a good few weeks, or I'm coming out of like a horrible game, which is like probably 95% of the Jets on tape after yesterday, right? Like you got to put something good out there.
Speaking of which, Rex Ryan keeps saying that the Jets are interested in him coming back as head coach.
Would you want that for like entertainment purposes?
Yes. It was the best and worst time of my professional life, and I'm ready to jump back in.
Those are your glory days. I don't know what you're talking about. You always reference them.
Underdog is the best place to cash in on all your takes during the playoffs. which players are going off and which ones are ice cold. With over 5 million happy players and $2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in on all your favorite athletes' performances. With their Pick'em game, you could win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on a player's stats, like yards, touchdowns, interceptions, and more. Underdog is the only pick'em platform that puts the power to cash out in your hands. Now you can either keep riding with your entry or tap the win now button to cash out whenever you want. Every dog deserves a second chance, and with Underdog Rescues, you can get your money back and receive a promo if an early injury causes your entry to lose. Now, I am not much of a pick'em expert, but a lot of my friends too, who are novices in this whole thing, say that Underdog is the best way to immediately get into the game. For example, this week, look at, hey, is Brock Bowers going to get higher or lower than 8 catches? Is Joe Mixon going to score more or less than 1 touchdown? These are great ways to get into the game, spice up the action a little bit, and make your weekend of watching football all the more enjoyable. And Underdog is the best place to play Pick'em. Download the app, sign up with promo code MMQB, and deposit now to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. That's promo code MMQB. You must be 18 years or older, 19 years or older in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 years or older in Colorado for some games, 21 years or older in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado for some games. If you're concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. And in New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. Quickly, let's go through the NFC playoffs. So, the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, this is it, right? I mean, Vikings-Lions for the number 1 seed, for the division, for home field. I mean, that's awesome. We're going to get that on Sunday Night Football. That is basically a conference title game that we get at the end of the regular season, which is very cool. The Eagles can't do anything, can't go anywhere. They're locked into the number 2 seed after they clubbed the Cowboys this past weekend.
So that means the Lions game tonight is irrelevant, right?
I believe that's correct.
So if you're Dan Campbell, do you sit? Like I think I'm careful tonight.
I don't know. I mean, he's not going to sit anybody ever. Like,
yeah, that's true.
That's how they. I feel
that's
like
true.
How they
that's
operate,
true. But
you know?
don't you think I don't know, like they're really banged up on defense. So if there's anybody borderline, maybe you make a judicious decision there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm not saying you sit Goff. Like what I'm saying is like if there's like 50-50 decisions, like wouldn't. I just think especially because you're going to have to play the Vikings on a short week to begin with. I think it makes sense to just be smart with certain guys.
I agree. The Rams, this one is interesting. Okay. So the Rams are in, but if they lose to the Seattle Seahawks, that puts you into, you're either going to play the Vikings or the Lions in round 1. And if they win, that's either the Packers or the Commanders. So I would much rather, if I'm Sean McVay, see the Commanders than the Lions and the Vikings.
In round 2, you mean?
In round 2, yes.
Round 2, okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay, yeah.
So that's worth keeping an eye on. The Buccaneers. So they can only make the playoffs as the NFC South champions. So they have to beat the New Orleans Saints on Sunday, or they need Atlanta to lose to the Carolina Panthers, which, based on what we saw on Sunday Night Football, is not out of the realm of possibility at this point. The Lions, like we talked about, they can win the NFC North and be the number 1 seed if they beat the Vikings. A loss puts Detroit at the 5 seed. Would they be the best 5 seed in NFL history? My God, but spicy little thing here. They might start the playoffs on the road against a Buccaneers team that beat them earlier in the year. So just keep that in mind. The Commanders, they're in as a wild card team. They're locked into the 6 or the 7. The Packers are kind of like the Commanders, where they're either the 6 or the 7. And then we're looking at the Falcons.
Hold on one second.
Okay, so the Falcons.
Hey, can you please come back? Thank you. Sorry, I was housekeeping. My bad. I think it was like 4 knocks on the doors. Eventually, they were going to barge in, so I figured I'd just nip it in the bud there.
Albert's in a bathrobe eating eating hotel room service, by the way. So this is what we have to deal with. And then the Falcons, okay, so they need a lot of help. So they have the longest NFC odds out of anybody, okay? They need to win. They need to beat the Carolina Panthers, and they need the Buccaneers to lose to the Saints, which, again, if anybody saw the Saints this past weekend, doesn't look great.
Not looking promising.
Not looking promising. So, all that said, I'm not a good Steve Kornacki, but that was my best. Okay. That was my best shot at it.
I think we pretty much covered it. So I think it's 12 spots are taken. Positioning still in flux. For the AFC's last spot, you have So just to recap, AFC, the Bills, the Ravens, the Steelers, the Chargers, the Chiefs, and the Texans are in. There's one spot open, 3 teams alive for that spot. The Broncos, the Dolphins, the Bengals, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Then the NFC, you have the Eagles in, the Commanders are in, the Vikings are in, the Packers are in, the Lions are in, the Rams are in, and then the Buccaneers and Falcons are still alive for the last spot, which is the NFC South champion. I think I got all of that right.
Yes.
So 12 teams in. I think it's 17 teams still alive total, right? I think it'd be 17 teams still alive. So
yes.
There you go, NFL. More than half the league's still alive.
Parody. That's what 345 Park likes to tweet.
There was lots of parody in Cleveland, Ohio on Sunday for sure.
Amazing.
Anything could happen out there.
Anything can happen. All right. So let's get into kind of just, some of our broader takeaways here from Sunday. Again, not to take away from the Ravens' 31-2 win over the Texans, the Seahawks' 6-3 win over the Bears, the Chargers' 40-7 win over the Patriots. The Bills 40-14 win over the Jets, the Raiders 15-point win over the Saints, the Giants, the Eagles 41-7 win over the Cowboys, the Buccaneers 48-14 win over the Panthers, the Titans Jaguars, which might have been the worst football game in the history of humanity. The Browns,
like a huge credit to the people who actually showed up to that game because it was also in a driving rainstorm in Florida. So, God. My hat's off to whoever decided to show up and sit through that thing.
I think they had whatchamacallit. They had Red Zone on the whole time too on the stadium
board. Did they really?
Yeah, so just so people could get drunk in the pool and watch Red Zone, which
awesome.
Yeah.
There you go. I mean,
there's worse ways to spend your Sunday for sure. Yeah. So let's get into some takeaways here because, here's my thought. The big discussion today, and I wrote about it at SI.com, I'm sure a lot of people will weigh in on it, is whether Saquon Barkley is 101 yards away from breaking Eric Dickerson's record. The Eagles have absolutely nothing to play for. They're locked into the 2 seed. After the game on Sunday, guys like Jordan Mailata are like, let's get after it. Let's get him the record. Saquon Barkley said it's in God's hands, but really it's Nick Sirianni, right? Let's not give Nick Sirianni's not God, right? Let's
definitely not according to people in Philly.
Definitely not according to people in Philly. And so we're in this situation now that's really fascinating, and there's a lot of layers, and I want to break it down. So I have a lot of thoughts on this, Albert. Probably too many thoughts for one single person. So here we go. I think that it needs to come from Saquon. First and foremost.
Yeah.
I think Saquon's the person who needs to come out and say it was my decision to go and break the record, or it was my decision to sit in week 18. And there's precedent here because Saquon chose not to go back on the field against the Giants a couple of weeks ago to break his career high against his former team. Okay. And anything else, you're basically making Nick Sirianni into a human meat shield here, because if you choose to play and you get Barkley hurt, and here's the other thing that people aren't talking about, if you get Jordan Mailata hurt or Cam Jurgens hurt or Mekhi Becton hurt or Lane Johnson hurt, okay, then Nick Sirianni's the all-time boob, for making this decision. If you choose to sit And again, far be it from me to take this away from him. But if you choose to sit, I think the potential for you as a human being in Philadelphia is so much greater. Like if you're Barkley and you come out and say, it's my decision, team first, we're going to the Super Bowl, I'm going to sit, I want everybody healthy. Me and the offensive lineman, I bought them all Uggs, we're going to kick our feet up and we're going to watch the backups beat the Giants on Sunday. Okay? And then let's imagine that the Eagles go to the Super Bowl. Yep. Saquon Barkley is a statue-worthy human in Philadelphia for doing that. Yep. Statue-worthy.
So here's my thought. My thought is you get Saquon and the leadership council together and they make a group decision. Because to me, this isn't just about Saquon, and it isn't just about Saquon in a number of ways. First of all, you and I both know, you as the former offensive lineman here, that this is an offensive line achievement too.
Yep.
I talked to Lane Johnson on Sunday night about this, and you could tell how much pride he takes in it. There are only so many guys who've rushed for 2,000 yards in a season. That also means there are only so many offensive linemen who have been a part of that. And, this is something that I think every offensive lineman who'd ever been involved in one of these would take great pride in. I bet you Chris Johnson's offensive lineman from 2009, take pride in it. Derrick Henry's offensive lineman from a few years ago, your Taylor Lewan's, guys like that take pride in it. Adrian Peterson's lineman from Minnesota from the year he came back from the ACL. And, they're also the ones that are putting their bodies on the line, Yep. So I think you bring together your leadership council, your veteran players, the guys that you would sit, and you say, guys, this is a decision for all of us. And we know we're not going to have the bye. And if we had the bye, maybe this is a lot easier. But we want to figure out a way to put this in your hands and allow you guys to make the decisions you want for your careers. And maybe that decision is we're going to play a half and see what happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think that's the worst idea in the world. Is if you play a half and the Giants stack the box and at halftime he's got 14 yards on 12 carries, then, then maybe you say the hell with it. You know what I mean? Maybe if he's at 94 yards, on 10 carries at the half, then all right, we're playing at least a series in the second half. Either way, I think getting full investment from everybody on a decision like this is the right way to go. So I'm with you on that. I would just add the caveat that I would include guys like Lane Johnson, like Jordan Mailata, like Cam Jurgens in that decision. I would make this a leadership council decision and also an offensive line decision in addition to being a Saquon Barkley decision.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement here that this needs to be a player decision. And they need to come out and say, because if you put that in Sirianni's hands, it's lose-lose, right?
Yep.
Because if Sirianni says, I want Saquon Barkley to go and break the rushing record, and this is what the guys want, and it's my decision, and he goes out and gets hurt, or Jordan Mailata gets hurt, or Cam Jurgens gets hurt, or Mekhi Becton gets hurt. By the way, all of these offensive linemen, I think, so Cam Jurgens was on IR at one point this year. Jordan Mailata was on IR at one point this year. Mekhi Becton had a concussion at one. Everyone had an injury at some point or another, right? And so if you make that decision, it has to be the players saying, "Hell yeah, we want to do it. This is our call. This has nothing to do with the coach." And that's great. If Sirianni makes that call and Saquon or one of these guys gets hurt, he's an all-time laughingstock.
Yeah, and I think one thing that Nick's done really well is he does have a good pulse for his locker room and what his team needs. I
agree with that.
I do think that's one. He's one of these guys where I think his emotional intelligence is pretty high, and so he understands the dynamics and what his team needs. And in a situation like this, I think he understands that he can't do anything without investment from the players, and so. On one hand, we're 99 times out of 100, this is not a player's decision. Obviously, a lot of players are going to want to play. You have to do what's best for the team. And in a lot of cases, it's taking guys off the field. This is something historic that is, definitely a twist to the situation where you have a chance to get a guy to a place that no one has been in 40 years. And so I think you have to at least give him the opportunity. You have to at least put that on the table for him and his offensive linemen, right?
Yeah, I'll say this though. I'm not asking you this to be a dick, but can you name one of Eric Dickerson's offensive linemen?
Jackie Slater.
Okay, nice. Can you name Eric Dickerson's coach when he broke the record?
John Robinson.
Really?
Is that right? Is that right?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know.
Hold on. I'm going to look it up. 1984, I think, right? Los Angeles Rams.
You were alive, which helped.
John Robinson. Yep.
Wow.
That was right.
All right.
Yeah.
Shut me down.
John Robinson was a really good. John Robinson's one of the few coaches that transcended college to pro.
Man.
So this is like, it's crazy looking at his stat line, though. 5.6 yards per carry. I mean, Eric Dickerson was a monster. One of the more underrated players in NFL history. And he was like ahead of his time too, because he like demanded the trade. See, this is probably like right when you're being born. But like one of my earliest football memories is because this was before the Herschel Walker trade. What a big deal it was that Eric Dickerson was forcing his way out and wound up going to the Colts. And I can still remember like watching Eric Dickerson's first game on like the TV in my parents' kitchen at the Hoosier Dome.
Wow. Henry Ellard. Wow.
Henry Ellard, yep. Was Jim Everett the quarterback? Let me look. No. This would have been pre-Jim Everett.
Jeff Kemp and Vince Ferragamo.
No way. Jeff Kemp? So is that like, that's the son of the congressman, right? I think.
I guess.
Because the older Kemp, no, yeah, I think so. Because there was the congressman who was a quarterback for the Bills in the. Hold on, let me make sure I'm right about this. He's a quarterback for the Bills in like the 60s, or maybe it's just another Kemp. Wow, Jeff Kemp. Yep, I was right. Son of, look at this. Look at the football historian Albert Breer here. Kemp is the son of late former AFL quarterback and American politician Jack Kemp. And Jeff Kemp played his college ball at Dartmouth. So
you
how
are
about
just
that?
a font of information.
Of useless.
I was gonna. I wasn't gonna say useless, but
1980s NFL information. Yeah.
All right, so egg on my face.
Anyway, but it is like, look, I think that like kind of shows you how historic this is. Like it, 2,000 yards has always been a big deal. I saw somebody on Twitter say like, I had to explain to my kid who O.J. Simpson was tonight, but
whoops,
because O.J. is actually like the crazy thing is like O.J. did it in 14 games,
yeah,
which is like, I mean, nuts, like really, really nuts. And then I think he was the only person to do it before they went to 16 games, right?
Yes.
And then Dickerson broke the record. And kids, look up Eric Dickerson. He had one of the most interesting football careers ever. He was the center of the cheating scandal and the death penalty at SMU.
Wow.
Right. Accepted the Trans Am from Texas A&M, right?
I mean, who wouldn't?
Yeah, so I think they said they Trans A&M, right? Because he took the Trans Am from Texas A&M and then signed with SMU.
I mean, I would still like a Trans Am,
but if you think about it, like he's so interesting because he was the one who he was like the first, maybe like the first real modern football player because he was at the center of the cheating scandal at SMU. They get the death penalty, goes to the pros. He breaks all the records with the Rams and then forces a trade to the Colts.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Just an all-time,
And now he's still out there saying he doesn't want Saquon to break his record, which is like honestly, like remarkable honesty. I love the honesty. I think that's the way most people would feel. Like there'd be a lot of people who would say the right thing, but really feel the way that Eric Dickerson feels. He's just saying it.
And think about for a second. I mean, we all saw, and I thought it was. I thought the whole thing was very sad. But like the Mark Gastineau documentary, which by the way, like no one from ESPN could have stopped him, like from going up there and making an ass of himself to Brett Favre. Yeah. I mean, don't we have some sort of human responsibility here?
I did enjoy the look on Brett Favre's face, though. At first, he thought he was kidding.
You knew he was going to do it.
At first, he thought he was kidding. You know what I mean? Like
you knew he was going to do it, and like, wouldn't some like part of your soul be like, let's save this poor old man from making a complete ass of himself? Poor old guy who's been banged up in the NFL. Like, can we just, But anyway, That's for a different pod. That's for our media morals and ethics podcast. But, it makes a big difference in the life of Eric Dickerson. He is the single season rushing record. He gets more money when he signs sports cards. He gets everything. And and that's part of selfishly, it's part of the calculation for Saquon Barkley, too.
It's on guys, like when they sign autographs, it's on their autograph. You know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't surprise me if his autograph now I haven't seen it, but it wouldn't surprise me if he signs it like with a 2105 at the end. Like every Hall of Famer signs. Like we were, I brought my kids over to a football practice at Boston College and ran into Richard Seymour, who's a great guy who I covered when he was in the Patriots 20 years ago, and he signed autographs for them, and they said HOF 22 on them. Like it's whatever it is that you have to hang your hat on. Like it's like that as a football player, you want to keep that. That's natural, and so of course you'd want to keep that record.
I sign everything Conor or 12 cover stories. SI.
There you go. There you go.
That's it.
But always looking for the 13th.
Always looking for the 13th. Always hungry. Always humble. Let's go back and forth here a little bit. Albert, you have plenty of takeaways over at SI.com. What's something that made you fired up from this past weekend?
Well, I just think like watching the way Joe Burrow plays, in the way he has played, and what he's done in coming back from the wrist, which I think quietly was. He said to me it wasn't scary. I have to think in the back of his head maybe it was a little bit, because that's your moneymaker if you're a quarterback, And I, like having, and you've been around Joe a little bit too. Like I like having gotten to know Joe a little bit. Like I feel like he is the closest descendant to Brady from a mentality standpoint, from a makeup standpoint, and I think Mahomes is this way too. But like, Joe's sort of like, Joe kind of plays like Brady too. He's got that stone cold killer to him, which in addition to all the physical ability he has turned him into an assassin as a player at this age. And I think like, watching him in that game, and I talked to Zach Taylor after the game, and there was a play. Do you remember the speed option to Khalil Herbert?
Oh yeah.
Right. So Zach told me after the game that play, which I think was like maybe the third to last play of that game, right? It picks up 13 yards. A lot of people won't remember it, but Zach said to me, he was like, that was the play for me. He's like, because they had come, the Broncos lined up, in a double A gap, like showing a double A gap blitz. So both the gaps next to the center are covered. And Joe checked to the speed option, and the wrinkle that Zach gave me to that was, they hadn't run that check in a practice, only once in a walkthrough. So how deep into his well Joe Burrow had to go to pull that out as like, yes, that's what I do in this situation. In a critical spot with the season on the line, where he was going to have to use his legs and get himself out onto the edge. It was funny because Zach goes like, it probably took him back to his days in high school or at Ohio State where he had to rely on his legs more. But like he was somebody like to see him do that, like I think shows how high a level he's playing at from a mental standpoint, and how sustainable what he's doing is going to be over the next 10 years. And I think it's just another example of why the Bengals have to do everything they possibly can to not let this become another Carson Palmer situation where you have created an environment where your quarterback thinks that he has to be Superman every week to win. And I think that that's sort of how this year has played out. And God, what if they didn't have Jamar Chase, And like you look at what's happened to their defense, and yeah, it's great that he gets to throw to Chase and Higgins and Mahomes and Allen, probably don't have guys like that on their side right now. But the flip side is that like Joe's been playing with his hand. Joe's been playing in an environment where he has to score like 40 points every week to win, which is a tremendous burden on a quarterback. I don't know if you saw the stat earlier in the season, but it was something like Tom Brady had lost over the course of his entire career. Like I think it was 4 games where his team had scored 33 points or more, right? And Burrow has lost that many this season alone. So it's just, I think like if you're the Bengals, like it's flashing red lights now, you have something so special and so great with the quarterback that I borderline hand Jamar Chase a blank check at the end of the season, and then I go to T. Higgins and say, what can we do to make this right? You know, and then if that means you are pushing money into the future, you do it. If it means that you've got to beef up your scouting department now and do more on the personnel end because like those guys are going to clog up your salary cap a little bit and you're going to need cheaper cost controlled talent, then you do it. You are in a window now. And this window's got a chance to last a decade. And you have a chance to do some really incredibly special things, whether you get in this weekend or not. So you do everything you can now. You do everything you can now to make sure that you aren't in the position going forward that you have been this year, which is fighting tooth and nail to get in the playoffs because you are deficient in so many areas outside of the quarterback and his receivers.
I think too, by the way, I will say, give the Bengals defense a little, and they
I'm not came up big, yeah. Like they forced the 3 and outs and I think they deserve credit for that. But on balance, over the course of the year, what are we looking at?
Oh yeah, no. For most of the season, this was not good. But obviously, against the Broncos, I would say like Jermaine Pratt had his best game of the season. Mm-hmm. Guys like there were like Josh Newton had his best game of the season. A bunch of these guys, who hadn't had great years, and Jermaine Pratt has been good. He's not the problem there, but he played otherworldly against the Broncos, had an amazing game, and so that's why I'm like, I want to see this team in the playoffs because I'm like, God, if you guys got a little bit of tailwind, you got a little bit of juice, right? And T. Higgins just playing like, all right, now I'm going to go out there and get that $20 million a year contract.
That throw and catch,
that's ridiculous.
Catch in overtime. I mean, on both ends, like it's a complete hole shot for a quarterback where. I mean, you got to put that in a spot. Mm-hmm. And then T. Higgins, like, just as far as just being able to leverage your length, and your physical ability and to keep your feet down in that situation was incredible. He gets, obviously, a well-deserved payoff with the game-winning touchdown after that. Yeah, I mean, like, Bills, Bengals in round 1 would be pretty electric. So I just, my big takeaway, though, is regardless of how the next, week plays out, the Bengals got to do everything they can to invest around Joe Burrow and make Jamar Chase feel like the franchise receiver that he is, and do what you can to keep T. Higgins. And, like I was one of these guys, like I felt like, all right, like you're resigned, you're going to keep Chase and you're going to let go of Higgins. I just felt like that was a fact of life based on where the Bengals are. Now I'm starting to look at it and say, if you can find a way to make it work in other places, like having these two with Burrow is something you probably want to hang on to. The same way for all of those years, the Colts hung on to Harrison and Wayne with Manning.
Yeah, I'm with you. My final big takeaway from this weekend, Sunday Night Football got me pretty hot. I think I'm tired of, I wrote this a couple weeks ago. This has been, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, Albert, and I'm just spouting off, which I want to do. But this is one of the worst clock management seasons I can remember, and maybe we're just paying attention to it more. But in terms of quarterback awareness, in terms of coaches just sitting on timeouts for absolutely no reason, and we had a game last night.
And that's just the Bears.
That's just But we had, you go back to the Bengals. I mean, the Zach Taylor thing was a mess at the end of that game. And, I understand that Zach Taylor said, okay, the Bengals had it with a minute and a half left, right. And then you run Chase Brown. Chase Brown slides, gets hurt on the slide. You didn't even have to run Chase Brown. You could have kneeled the clock out and kicked the game winner. You didn't have to go to overtime. Right. But that said, we have Sunday Night Football where at the end of this game, the Falcons have a chance to kick a game-winning field goal. And Michael Penix, you have 2 timeouts, and you burn 30 seconds over the course of one completion and getting reset and getting back to the ball. And I understand what Raheem Morris's explanation was after the game, that, okay, we want to see if we can, kind of keep them off balance and get that ball in there. Don't give them a chance to reset. But you have to get on the ball faster then, and you have to be confident in your team's ability to do that. I think you just bang the timeout like you have 2 of them for a reason there. And Penix was playing well. I don't know. That was my big takeaway here is that, if you were going to say we don't want Bill Belichick, if Art Smith wasn't doing a good enough job, and now we fixed it by bringing in Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix and Raheem Morris, that was a bad spot to lose a game and basically knock yourself out of the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think if it really kind of struck me as you were coaching Michael Penix in that situation as if he was Kirk Cousins.
Right.
I think Kirk Cousins in that situation makes that work, because I think the offense is getting to the line quicker. They're getting to their call quicker. And I think if you've got a veteran quarterback, that can be the correct call to hold on to those 2 timeouts because you're hurrying to the line and you're probably getting that snap off before, 12 seconds left, right? Like to me, if Kirk Cousins is running the show, maybe you're getting that snap off at 20 seconds or 25 seconds, but that's how you have to coach it. You know what I mean? You can't coach it as if Kirk Cousins is in there. You have to, and it was the same thing with Caleb Williams on Thanksgiving and the end of that game. It was you cannot coach this as if you have a veteran quarterback. You have to coach it for what it is. And what it is right now is you've got a rookie quarterback whose head is probably spinning, who's trying to project poise to his teammates. And while he's trying to project poise to his teammates and figure out what's going on, that clock is ticking down. So, I think that's, and I think, and sometimes that's what happens with it, with younger or first time coaches. You had a first time offensive coordinator in both those situations, right? It was Thomas Brown in Chicago. It was Zach Robinson in Atlanta, where it's there's a conventional way to coach it, and there's a by the book way to coach it in the NFL. And the reality is you're not coaching robots, you're coaching human beings.
Right.
And so in a situation like that, it's I have to coach this differently because I have a rookie quarterback. So I'm going to use my timeout here. So I'm giving him a better chance to succeed in the next play. I can't coach him like he's Kirk Cousins. And I sort of saw that as the issue I would have taken with it. And I mean, to me, it completely mirrored what we saw from the Bears on Thanksgiving, which wound up resulting in Matt Eberflus being fired.
And Raheem was fired up after the game. I mean, and rightfully so. And, if I'm a coach and I made a mistake, the last thing I'd want to do is talk to me about it, when when everyone's crushing me and asking me and called for me to be fired and all that terrible stuff. But it's one of those things where, the Falcons have put themselves in a position where they're we finally found the problem. And very clearly they haven't. And just getting to 8 or 9 wins is not the solution,
Well, I mean, the problem was that, and I hate to rehash this because I think Raheem was a good choice as head coach, and I think he will be a good head coach there. But I think part of it is when an owner goes in and doesn't want to admit more things are broken than more things are broken than he wants to believe, and then he has people in his ear telling him, "Well, we're actually not that far off." Well, Arthur Smith actually screwed this up, and Arthur Smith didn't invest in the quarterback. When the reality was, the plan at quarterback was laid out for Arthur Blank. Right. It was, we don't think there's a great option available this offseason. We're going to wait another year and take one next year, right? Which is what they wound up doing anyway.
Right.
But if Arthur Smith had known his job was on the line, I think he would have basically stocked that position differently in 2023. Instead, you lose the year in 23, and now you're being convinced by everybody around you that somehow the coach who laid out that plan for you, who followed through with the plan for you, who actually wound up being right about that plan because the options in 24 were better than they were in 23, it was his fault, and that everybody else should stay. And, now you sort of get what, you signed up for, in my opinion.
Yeah. You think Bill Belichick loses that game last night?
I think, and I think Raheem's the right choice. I think Raheem will prove to be the right choice over the next 5 years, absent going and getting Bill Belichick. But I think with Bill at the controls, that's probably an 11-win team.
I think so too. All right, give me one more takeaway from this weekend. What piqued your interest?
So, I just think
Drew Lock. You want to talk Drew Lock?
Well, I'll give you another reclamation project.
Can I give you one more Drew Lock stat though?
This is like the Drew Lock spectacular.
The sixth greatest performance in NFL history since 1999 in terms of EPA per play in a game. The sixth greatest, behind only Peyton Manning twice, Phillip Rivers, Lamar Jackson, and Tom Brady.
Wow.
Drew Lock.
I'm telling you, like, so I guess then the Vikings are going to let Sam Darnold walk and turn Drew Lock into next year's Darnold. Is that what we're saying here? Because that's where
I'm saying invest now, people.
Okay.
Invest now.
So, like, my last takeaway would be we should use Sam Darnold to inform how we look at quarterbacks going forward. And that a quarterback 95 times out of 100 isn't going to come in and fix all of your problems. There are so few that are capable of doing that. And that class of player, I mean, how many guys would you fit into that category right now? 4?
Of quarterbacks who can fix other people's problems?
Yeah.
Mahomes.
Burrow.
But here's the thing, like Burrow is so good, but they still might not make the playoffs. Right. You know what I mean? Allen, kind of, but I think it's just Mahomes for me personally.
Right. So, like, what does that tell? And even those guys, right? So, like, Mahomes, and I'm not saying he wouldn't have made it, but he walked into a situation where one of his tackles was the first overall pick in the draft. The other tackle was a big money free agent pickup in Fisher and Schwartz. He had Tyreek Hill. He had Sammy Watkins. He had Kareem Hunt. He had Andy Reid. His first year, he had Matt Nagy as his offensive coordinator. He had Mike Kafka on that staff. He had Eric Bieniemy on that staff. It's just, like, environment is so important. And I think Pat would tell you that, Lamar Jackson couldn't have gone to a better situation than he's in Baltimore. Josh Allen walked into a great situation where they were building and they were getting better and they had been in the playoffs. All 3 of those guys got drafted by playoff teams, which is rare for first-round picks. But the Bills and Chiefs traded up for their guys, and Lamar tumbled all the way down to 32. So, like, I look at the Sam Darnold thing, and to me, it's right there in bright lights for all of us. Like, he fails with the Jets, he fails with the Panthers. He goes to the Niners, and go back and watch that game on Christmas. We've talked about this before from last year, and tell me that wasn't the Sam Darnold we're watching now. Mm-hmm. Because he was in a good environment where they weren't asking too much of him, and now he goes and he has the year that he's having. And like I've talked to Kevin a few times about this. When talking to Kevin O'Connell about this over the last few months, it's like, why do people keep waiting for the other shoe to drop? This was a third pick in the draft. He's very talented, I mean, if you line up him and J.J. McCarthy, who's the more talented player?
Yeah.
Right? So, like, I'm not saying that to say they should give Sam Darnold $50 million a year and walk away from J.J. or anything like that, because I know they love J.J. too. But I think it shows you how important environment is for quarterbacks and how this nature versus nurture thing is a very real thing. And, you can sit around and wait forever for your Tom Brady to come or your Peyton Manning to come. But as a head coach, as a general manager, it takes like lightning striking twice in the same place for that to ever happen.
Yep.
Like it's just, you cannot count on it happening. And I look at what the Vikings have done in emphasizing building the right environment for the quarterback and saying, whoever we have at quarterback going forward, we're not going to overextend and give up other pieces on our roster. We're going to build an environment that's going to work for a quarterback. And now you got Sam Darnold out there playing with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Jalen Naylor's becoming a really good number 3, TJ Hawkinson, Aaron Jones, they go and get him in free agency. They've just created such a great environment for the quarterback to the point where J.J. McCarthy's camp was trying to engineer him going to the Vikings before the draft last year. And now Sam Darnold is showing us why.
Yeah.
Like it's such a great example of it's not always the quarterback. Sometimes it's you that screwed up. Sometimes they didn't strike out, you did.
Yeah.
And, I just think too often, we look at these things like you got to get the quarterback at all costs. Like, and I think that there's a reality to that, right? Like, but you also have to build the right environment around the quarterback at all costs. Like, I look at like what Washington has done for Chase and Daniels, and if you ask me, I think all three of the guys who were drafted top 3 this year have a chance to be like awesome players, right? Like in the right environment, I think any of the three could be eventually in the top 5 in the NFL at the position. I think that highly of them.
Yeah.
But who would you bet on right now? Jaden. Best environment by far.
Jaden
Right.
with a close second to Bo Nix and then a toss-up because
Well, no, I'm saying the top 3. The top 3.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm isolating the top 3.
Yeah.
But if you isolate the top 3, who, like, it's not even close who's in the best environment.
Yeah.
He's got a coordinator who fits him. They're running a system that fits him. They're doing this before they have the tackle situation right, but they've been able to manage it in a certain way where it's okay. They have Terry McLaurin for him to throw to. And they, like, everything is like how do we create the right environment for him? And now they're going to go into this offseason where they have assets. They have a full complement of draft picks. They have over $100 billion in cap space they can build around him. And they can create an even better environment around him. So, like, I think so much of what happens at that position, we tend to look at these things in a vacuum. And Sam Darnold is such a great case study. And it's a credit to him that he survived what he survived. Because I think being through what he went through would ruin a lot of players, and it didn't ruin him. And, you can see the reaction in that locker room, like what his teammates think of him when he walked into the locker room yesterday.
He can't be done. Can't be done. Can't just get rid of Sam.
I know, right? I don't know. What do you do? Like, this is like, to me, like this is the Chargers in 2005.
2 years.
Do you know that? Do you know that story, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So for those who don't know, they draft Rivers. They've sort of given up on Breeze. They draft Rivers 4th overall because Eli Manning refuses to go there. So they wind up trading down. They draft Rivers 4th overall. And then Drew Brees beats him out in camp, and Drew Brees plays lights out in 2004. They win 12 games. So they franchise Brees to kick the can down the road another year. Ultimately, Brees gets hurt at the end of 2005, and Rivers becomes a really good quarterback for them in 2006 and going forward. I don't know if that's not the best plan right now.
Say, Sam, 2 years, $100 million.
Would you go that far?
I mean, Sam's going to make $45-50 million.
So now here's
a
the
year
thing, though, is now you're giving up the advantage you would have with JJ on a rookie contract if you wanted to take advantage of that, say, in 2026, right? So, I mean, you could
1
tag
year,
him.
$50 million?
Just tag him, right? Or
Yeah,
was
but
the
then,
tag
he,
going to be
but then he
41,
wouldn't
42?
like that. Like, you got to give him a little extra, right?
Yeah, you could.
I don't know.
So,
I just think-
your pause there tells me you agree with absolutely everything I just said.
I think it's more complicated than Chris Collinsworth made it seem a couple weeks ago, which is that unless they win the Super Bowl, Sam Darnold's not coming back. And I don't think it's that simple.
I think it's... Well, and I think the other part of it that's hard, too, is, again, these decisions aren't made in a vacuum. You've got, like, a locker room full of players that are... Like, what do you say to, like, Harrison Smith or Aaron Jones or, Christian Darrisaw, Justin Jefferson, if it's like, nope, we got this quarterback who's playing like a top 10 player at his position, but you know what? We'll roll the dice on a kid who you haven't even seen since August. Like, that's tough for your locker room too, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
When you've got all these guys that know, they should sense it, right? We're close. Also, you should give Kevin O'Connell whatever he wants.
I'm all for that. I'm all for owners just spending a bunch of money.
Yep.
Keep the right people around.
Yeah. Junior doesn't need that private jet. One private jet's enough for the whole family.
Yeah. They're all playing Madden apparently anyway, those owners' kids.
Well, that's only according to Aaron Rodgers on the Pat McAfee show.
Oh, boy.
Did you catch the Jim Nantz nugget there at the end of the Bills-Jets game?
No.
See, this is what you've done to me. Now that I'm a fan of bad football, I was actually had the sound on the Jets-Bills game at the end. And Jim Nantz threw one of those, like, probably from the production meeting gems in there, where he said like something along the lines of, and this is probably it for Aaron Rodgers with the Jets. I mean, when you say something about the owner's son, like he said, it's tough to come back from that. It was like one of those, like, it didn't say it was coming from somewhere, but if you go back and you listen to it, it's like, that sounds like it was,
Woo!
That sounds like it's coming from somewhere.
Hello.
Yeah. So thank you, Conor, for getting me to pay attention to bad football. That's my, that's what I've taken from you for 2024 is a true appreciation for watching Tyrod Taylor and Mitch Trubisky play out the end of a blowout.
Oh, I'm honored that I played that part in your life. And thank you guys for making 2024 one of the most fun years that we've had on this show. It's been a lot of fun to broaden out, to meet you guys on YouTube, on social media, and a big thanks to our producer Shelby, who's been spearheading all of that and getting this podcast out into the earbuds of more people. Please, as always, leave us a rating and a review. It really helps other people find the show. And check out Matt and Gilberto on Thursday. Is this going to be, I'm bad at math. Yes, it'll be our last show for 2024.
Right, yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you. Big thanks to Shelby for putting up with Grumpy Breer on Monday mornings and my scattershot timing when I can make myself available. I appreciate you, Shelby. I appreciate you, Conor. And I'll appreciate everybody if I can just get the right result at 5:00 on January 1st. If there's one thing that I need for 2025, it's 3 wins in January. So let's get that going in the Rose Bowl on Thursday. Go Bucks!
All right, you heard it here first. Albert Breer.
Wednesday, not Thursday. Wednesday. Got my days mixed up.
Albert shockingly throwing his allegiance behind the Buckeyes. Thank you guys. And
big game for Notre Dame too. Right after.
Yeah, they're not going to win it, so that's fine. Let them go. Georgia's going to beat them by like 35. Actually, Georgia's going to win by 28 points.
Really?
That's my
faith in Gunnar Stockton there.
28 points. Yeah. That's my thought. So, I don't know. Check back next week, see if I'm right.